Yes, thank you for having me today. My name is Theba Lawley. I've lived in Little Rock well over 40-something years. So I do call it home. Originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's where I was born. I became a caregiver to both of my parents who were diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2017. They were both diagnosed at the same time. Not married, not living together, one in one state and the other one here. So I was unaware about what Alzheimer's was, dementia, but I was the sole child nearby. My brother at the time lived in Hawaii. So the first goal for me was to get my dad here, to get him a proper diagnosis. I thought he was just dealing with Parkinson's disease. That's what his doctor initially told him. So I did not know and did not think that it would lead into dementia, so it would be Lewy body. And so it would have that dementia, Parkinson-like symptoms, is what I would learn. At the same time, my mother was showing signs of cognitive impairment, and I really thought it was because she had just lost her sister in 2016, and I thought she was just grief-stricken. So I didn't ignore the symptoms. I lived with her at the time, but I certainly did not know it was going to be Alzheimer's. So once I got both my parents here, I began to seek help, understanding, had great friends lead me into the direction of caregiving classes and information, support group, and then I began the journey of being a caregiver for both of them at the same time. My father did pass away from his dementia in 2019, and I'm currently caring for my mom, and I gave up my job of 25 years to be her sole caregiver. I tell people I'm the cheapest and most qualified caregiver for her. I love her dearly. She's in great spirits. She's in the middle stages. And so part of respite, I'm a new advocate for the respite care because I'm taking advantage of the respite grant right now by having someone sit with my mom so she's not alone and I can do this. So that is just kind of my situation in a nutshell. For me, it's the role reversal of being, for lack of a better term, the mom, all of a sudden, for my mother, who can, and sometimes, most of the time, is very childlike in her understanding of things and her abilities. She's physically in great shape. She can take care of herself, but ultimately, it was very difficult at first. I started a podcast called Don't You Remember, because that was the term I would use all the time at the very beginning before I understood that was a term that's not going to help with an Alzheimer's patient, because they're just simply not going to remember. So it was those three common words that made me realize something was wrong. It was, for my dad, it was easier because he kind of waved the red flag or the white flag and he said, I need help. Something's wrong, I need help. Mom was a different personality. The things that I began to notice that she was struggling with were the things that were the most common and the thing that she really took care of well, like the checkbook. And so when I realized she wasn't making payments on stuff, which would have never happened. And for me, it was the difficulty of knowing how to approach her as a daughter still, not understanding my role as a caregiver, but I had to approach her as a daughter, reminding her, letting her know that things were not the same for her. It didn't go over very well. Mother-daughter relationships can be that way. So I say that to say that the next phase is the combativeness, me understanding that she is going to act out, not because of anything I've done or said, but because she's afraid. So when I when I accepted first and foremost that we were both afraid, but she must have been terrified. And I know that my dad was terrified because he realized things were different for him. He couldn't articulate them. Mom couldn't quite articulate them. But the last thing she wanted to do is tell her daughter that she was not capable, or she didn't understand things that she understood. So the most difficult was just that adjustment. And I knew that ultimately I was going to have to make the changes. I could not expect her to. There was no logic or reason for her to be able to under that disease. So I had to accept full responsibility that it was going to be how I responded to things and how I loved her well. You know, I'm not in it by myself. As a believer in Jesus Christ, He was the ultimate caregiver. So I'm not by myself. I've had to really lean on Him in helping me change, heal areas where I was either angry, stubborn, fearful. And so I'm most grateful for that aspect of it. So that would be the most difficult, is just the role reversal and our adapting to that. The most rewarding thing for me is that my mom is calm, comfortable, and trusts me fully. That's been the most rewarding, and it goes back to realizing that if I didn't make the personal changes spiritually, but also emotionally, my therapist has been helpful, but that also learning about the disease and learning about how it was going to affect me, absolutely everything that I have done in the last several years, to the point of going ahead and leaving my employment of 25 years to be her full-time caregiver, has brought about where she is. And I couldn't ask for anything more for her than to be what they taught me at the very beginning in class. Your job is to keep them safe and comfortable, nothing more. And I know that by my personal changes and spiritual changes of trusting God more fully in this process, I have been able to give her more. And that has been extremely rewarding to be a part of that relationship where she's looking to me. And it's amazing with Alzheimer's, my dad did the same thing. They are feeding off your emotions, and they look at you. They are wanting to know how to feel. And so that's another reason I went ahead and quit my job, even though at one point I went part-time. I was still bringing home anxiousness and stress and frustration, and I was not attached or present with her at times, and so I could see that. I could see her act that out, and so that was important. So you do make a lot of sacrifices. Obviously, physically, you're making a sacrifice, career-wise, whatever that means, and also just I do have to find more time to visit with my friends and make points of socialization because I'm not out there. When my friends come over, I talk 90 miles an hour because that's my first adult conversation. So my best friend comes over on Tuesday night and she just sits there, and I'm doing a lot of biblical studies, so I've got to share them with her. And I got to hear myself talk out loud. And with my therapist, she's got to accept me, like, to a certain degree. So I really study her, but I like just all these things and just to know, am I still present?